Welcome back to Judgment Decision Making. I'm Dr. Padilla, and now we're going to talk about the specifics of choice architecture. Now, one key idea with this choice architecture system is that there should be a stimulus response compatibility. Stimulus response compatibility is a psychological principle that says the stimulus or a signal should be consistent with the desired action, meaning that when you provide someone with information or a stimulus, it should lead to your desired action. When there are inconsistencies, performance suffers and people blunder. So let's look at some examples of those. This is from the intro from a really fantastic course called Cognitive Engineering by Dr. Spencer Castro. And here's some examples of stimulus response disconnect. Right, those are pretty hilarious. Basically, the way that people were supposed to engage in their environment, they didn't because they didn't see or understand what was expected of them. Okay, here's another example. When doors have a pull handle on a push door, isn't that the most annoying thing in the world? It happens to me almost every time, and I get so frustrated when there's a pull handle on a push door. Here's another example. This is bananas. It would be so hard to figure out what you're supposed to do. What you're providing to people doesn't match what you want them to do. Okay, if you indirectly influence the choices of others, you are a choice architect. So in those last few examples, they probably were designed so poorly because individuals didn't realize they were a choice architect. And so they didn't really think that the choices of those designs mattered, but they absolutely do. So there are 6 principles of good choice architecture that we're going to talk about right now. The first one is defaults. People tend to take options that require the least amount of effort. These are the defaults. So you have to think really critically about the defaults because most people will go with whatever the default is. Defaults are unavoidable, and there should be a rule to guide what happens when the decision maker does nothing. So if someone forgets to take an action, the default should help them do the best thing for them in a specific case. Let's look at some good defaults. Programs that autosave, great, right? How many of us forget to save our documents, forget to save version control? So autosave defaults are fantastic. In Zoom meetings, if you have someone who set up the Zoom meeting where upon entry, the participants are muted, that's really helpful, so you don't have to remember to mute yourself. Or if you were smart enough to set up your own defaults for Zoom, great work. It took me so long to do it. I don't know why, I was just being lazy, but it takes effort to change the defaults, so you have to think critically about what the defaults are. Here's another example when you're setting up new software. By default, usually the full software setup is what's happening, and you can customize if you want, if you don't want the default option. Let's look at some bad defaults. Here's a horrible default. I use Adobe Illustrator software all the time. The default font is Myriad Pro. I hate this font, so I change it manually every time. I could probably change the default, but I don't. I just get mad every single time. I hate this font. I hate this default. Now, oftentimes, people use defaults to get you to spend more money than you naturally would. So sometimes you see the default option as being a more expensive option, maybe not one that you would normally pay for. Here's one I think about a lot. So there's different defaults for software for visualizing your data. What you're seeing at the bottom, all of those things in gray, that's what the actual data looks like. If you look at the one in the middle, it should look like a smooth sphere. That's the underlying data. But if you look at the 2 on the top, those are the default colors that systems apply to data. And the smooth sphere no longer looks smooth, it looks bumpy or ridged. So these are horrible defaults, and this is the reason why some scientific visualizations are so awful, is because the scientists aren't visualization researchers and they use the defaults, and the defaults are awful in this case. Okay, another thing that the system should do is expect errors. Humans make mistakes as well A well-designed system expects its users to err and is forgiving as possible. Example of this is Metro cards that allow you to insert the card in any direction. This one doesn't. I think it's from New York. See where it says insert this way, this side facing you? Why isn't it designed where you could insert it any other way? You know, it might cost a fraction of a cent to make it compatible for all directions, and it would decrease errors significantly if they made these Metro cards multi-directional. Here's another example. These is birth control pills, and they have the pink pills for all of the days that you're not on your period, and then the white ones are just placebo pills. They're just sugar pills. They don't do anything for you, but they help people not make errors because you're still taking a pill every day. You don't have to change your action, but it is making sure that you're taking, no pill and replaces it with the placebo. So it's kind of a way of allowing people to continue a strategy so that they wouldn't be making errors by switching strategies. Another really great example, gas nozzles between gasoline and diesel are different sizes, so you literally could not insert a diesel size nozzle into a gas type car. It is just prohibiting you from making that error. And I think this is the last one. This is in CAT courses or anytime you're doing a survey. If you forget to answer some things, it will give you an error message saying you should probably complete some of these questions. Okay, expect errors. And there's a few types of errors that we'll talk about. This big one is a post-completion error. This is when you're finished with your task and your mind switches to something else. You're done, now your mind is somewhere else, and then that's when you see quite a few errors. So here is an example. A woman is driving off with the gas pump still in her car. That's so sad. And this is really even more ridiculous because this is a place where there is a gas attendant. So she didn't even have to pump the gas, and she still made an error. One more. This is a fantastic way of stopping people from making errors. People tend to drive away with the gas pump cover, I can't remember what it's called, but the cover thing on top of their car. So you would unscrew it, put it on your car, pump your gas, drive away, and it would be on the highway. So what they started doing with newer cars is they just have a little piece of plastic that attaches the cover to the cap, and then you can't possibly put it on top of your car. So some great systems that help us make better judgments. You should also receive feedback. Well-designed systems should provide feedback to people to help them improve their performance. Really easy example, we get warnings when our machines are running low on battery. It's giving us feedback so we can plug it in and improve our performance. Okay. Systems should also map choices onto welfare. A good system of choice architecture helps people improve their ability to map, hence selecting options that will make them better off. What I mean by mapping is it can be hard to translate something abstract like investment stocks to how you want to retire when you're older. So systems kind of like this, and this isn't a very good one. I actually just had trouble finding ones that were good. Systems like this can help people map what they want, or the choices they have to what they want. So in this example, it's a list of the best cities to retire in. And what you can do from this list is see what is important to you. It might be important to golf, or to be around other people your age, or to have leisure time or access to healthcare. When you see it like this, you can decide what is of value to you and make your decisions based on the things that you value, rather than all of the other data you can consider when you're moving to a new place. You can consider per capita, and there's so many statistics. So while this is still a little bit confusing, it at least helps people who are thinking of retiring map their goals onto the options. Okay, the next is structuring complex choices. People make choices based on complexity and the size of available options. As these alternatives increase, they are more likely to be influenced by choice architecture systems because people will default to using simple strategies rather than thinking about all of these complex options. So when you have so many different components of a decision, it's important for a good choice architecture system to structure those choices for you. I'm going to use this example again. Again, I don't think it's that good, but it at least illustrates the point of structuring the decision. So you could think of, hundreds of different things that might be influencing your decision about where to move. This one is simplifying it down to 9 key things that you might want to consider. So in that way, it's structuring the many different data points that are available to people considering moving. Last is incentives. Choice architects must think about incentives when designing a system. Good architects direct people's attention to incentives. Now, I think a great example of this are thermostats that show you the amount of energy use happening at that time. If you have an incentive to decrease your energy use, but it doesn't tell you directly on the thermostat, you have to go to an app or a website, whatever, there's a level of removal and you can't change your actions now and see it immediately the results of it on the thermostat. So pairing those two, having your energy use on your thermostat, makes it so much easier for you to understand the incentives of doing things like, running your dishwasher less or turning off lights, that type of thing. Okay, summary here. We have a good choice architecture system has 6 components. It has defaults. It expects people to err and allows people to err in a reasonable way. It provides feedback. It gives mapping of choices to welfare or what people desire. It structures those complex choices, and it provides incentives.